All right, good morning. Coming in hot with another episode of Camp Content. Today we are sitting with Sheryl Plouffe. She is a true Canadian success story. She spent over 17 years on air as an esteemed weather presenter and then graduating to becoming a host of two popular Toronto shows. After four more successful years in broadcasting, she decided it was time to do something new. So now her focus has shifted from delivering news stories to helping entrepreneurs build their brands and businesses with YouTube videos, podcasts, and digital programs. Talk about a powerhouse set of skills.
Yeah, she's used her many years of experience, as Molly said, to help entrepreneurs and take charge of their brands and businesses. She is now an on-demand business advisor, video strategist, coach, consultant, public speaker. List goes on and on. She will turn your dreams into a reality. We did have to put that in there. So she's been around for more than 4 decades. So when it comes down to building your brand or business from scratch, no one will be better at helping you out than Canada's leading voice on television, news, and information. So Sheryl, my first question is, so I see you're in Toronto, or not Toronto, but up in Ontario. Are you a sports fan by chance?
We're a baseball family, and we're a hockey family. I couldn't be a true Canadian without being into hockey. So hockey and baseball have a real.
So are we having a bad day today because of the Leafs?
We are having a bad day. Yes.
I mean, this is going off the rails right away here, but I mean, because you look at it, the struggle the past few years has been they can't get out of the first round. They finally do this year, and then they're down 3-0. Does that, if you guys get swept, does it even count as getting out of the first round this year?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we've been waiting for so long. I just need to see this in my lifetime. That's all I ask. So yeah, it doesn't look so good at this point, but that's okay. Leafs forever. #Leafs forever. My grandfather was a huge Leafs fan, and listen, I'm into hockey. My son is a goalie, so we're into hockey, of course. But I'm not a I'm a massive fan. But it's just like I would just want to see them do better than they've done.
Right, that's just want to see a little success. Yeah.
Positive encouragement. Yeah. I'm here for it. Well, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you here.
Oh, so glad to be here. I love talking about content, and it has transformed my life, in many ways. And this whole journey started for me when I was 18 years old, creating content and in a cable access, news magazine program that I was hosting at that age. And then it just kind of progressed from there. And then I got to national TV before I was 30, and then I spent a whole lifetime there as well. So it's been a real ride.
For sure, yeah. And I'm super impressed with everything you're doing. Like, especially coming from our generation or a little bit older, we really straddled the line between analog and digital. And you have clearly pivoted and adapted to all the new technology and how to use it. I mean, even just your studio setup with your nice lighting and your nice color, like you're really doing more than most, and you seem to have clearly you have a very solid grasp on how content can change your business, how to present yourself. And so let's talk about a little bit about that, because I know that's one of the main focuses of your business is not just going on podcasts and having a podcast, but how to actually show up on them.
It is a part of it, but you might be surprised to learn, Molly, that, in the very early stages, especially in this iteration of my career, which is in the marketing space and the media space and coaching and consulting, I started from my kitchen counter. Really, I started from the kitchen counter. Mind you, I had a nice kitchen, but started from the kitchen counter. And so I didn't really focus all that much on what is my background and what's going on behind me. I made it clean, I made it tidy, but I made it uncluttered, but I didn't make it perfect. And really, sometimes you have to be resourceful. You have to be resourceful at certain stages of your business. And I know you know this so well because you have to understand what stage you're at. Are you in the bootstrapping stage right now? Are you in the early startup where you have to do with what you have? Or are you at the growth phase where now you have a little bit that you can start reinvesting in yourself? And, it's an evolution, and it really is a journey that people have to understand what stage that they're at.
For sure. I feel like it's a constant, life is just a constant journey of challenges, right? Like there's never once this happens then everything will be fine. It's like, there's always that thing. Well, once my website is done, then I can start once this is done, or once I get past this, or once I'm not sick anymore. But that's just life, right? And as an entrepreneur, I feel like you're just really jumping onto that bandwagon and embracing the absolute chaos of owning a business and being able to adapt and pivot and adjust to what's happening and use what you have. Because at the end of the day, I always say, the first time you do something, it's going to suck. Second time, it'll suck less. Third time, you'll be okay at it. And the fourth time, you're an industry expert, but you gotta get there. You gotta put in the reps, even if it's at the kitchen counter or if it's in a paid studio. You still gotta get the reps in.
Yeah, you do have to get the reps in. I believe in that too, that the first time you do anything, especially if you do a video, and it's not going to be great. Sorry, it just isn't. I just think about YouTube. A lot of people who are starting off, let's see, YouTube channels, your first 5 videos are going to be less than stellar. Just be okay with that. But just know that by putting out those 5 less than stellar looking videos, the content should be on point. Your message needs to be clear and on point. But we're just talking about the aesthetics of it. It might not look the way you intend for it to be in your mind, because in your mind you've said, I need it to be perfect. Get those first 5 videos out. Get those first 10 videos out of the way. And now you're on the path to actually being able to build a monetizable platform that's evergreen, that keeps, bringing in clients.
For sure. It's like cooking, right? Like you don't expect to make a souffle first time you go in the kitchen. You know what I mean? It's like you got to build up these things and use what you have and get good at it. And you can't expect your first 5 recipes to be killing it, knocking it out of the park. You got to get comfortable in the kitchen.
But at least have a recipe.
Things work.
Have a recipe.
But have a recipe.
Have something that have a framework or a recipe that you can follow. And you might not have the flair, let's just say the flair. You're not, Gordon Ramsay, let's say, or whatever, but you're putting together the recipe and you're putting the ingredients together and you're making something, right? And it's going to be edible. It's going to be edible, but then over time, you're going to make it amazing.
Yeah. So, I guess sticking to that a little bit about, having the right recipe and everything, looking at your YouTube, just the way you approach things, and your videos get good views, right? You 56,000 views, 100-something thousand views, 200-something thousand views, and you have your one about Zoom virtual backgrounds that's got over 1 million. Was that kind of right place, right time? Because that one looks like it was 3 years ago, so probably height of the pandemic. It's everybody's downloading Zoom at the first time. That's the one that pops up, and then it just starts gaining and gaining and gaining.
It's partly, it is partly at the right time, but it's also reverse engineering, and that's something that I do and teach other people to do. Is you want to know, okay, well, what are people in your ideal audience looking for solutions to at this moment that pertains to the thing you do? So I reverse engineered it, and I looked and I went, okay, well, let's do some keyword research. Let's figure out what people are actually searching for solutions to. And then you make the content for that. And that's how you almost pretty much guarantee results. You almost guarantee results that way. And so that's, I think, part of the reason, Matt, why I have a video that has over 1 million views and many others that have tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of views. I have, I think, 2.4 million video views on my channel at this point.
Yeah, because I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. They'll go put all this effort into making the video itself, and it looks so nice and everything. Like, why do I have 10 views? It's just such a well-designed and created video. But then there's they don't understand that there's all the back-end stuff is how you're going to get the visibility and everything like that, not just making a pretty, very well edited video and just popping it out there and hoping for the best.
I think so. You're right. I think a lot of people, and production's important, don't get me wrong, but many people, and again, depending on what stage you're at, you have to know what stage you're in, is they'll focus too much attention on that as opposed to really going out there and saying, okay, what's my reverse engineering strategy? What is the message I'm sharing? What's the frame? What's the content? What is the actual value of the thing I'm sharing? That's so important. Say something of value. Have a point of view, share your insights, have something knowledgeable to say, develop a point of view, right? Be polarizing if you want to be, but there has to be some meat on the bone to the thing that you believe in about your industry or about your niche. And I think that's something that's often missing, is people haven't formulated their own opinions on anything and they're just regurgitating what they see around them. Have some thought, put some ideas. That's what thought leadership is. It's leading with thought. Think about what it is that you believe, have opinions, and then share them with your audience on your channel.
Yeah, there's a tool called Surfer SEO, and what it does is you can plug in like a keyword, and it'll create a cluster for you, and then it'll show you what the search volume is, and then you can sort by the highest search volume. So when you're talking about giving people the answers to the questions that they're actually asking, right? Because we were having a lot of clients coming to us and saying, hey, can you look through this panel discussion I was on 8 months ago and find the gems? And we're just like, no. I'd rather pull you in a studio and ask you 10 questions that are relevant to right now and give you 10 gems versus searching through 40 minutes of content to maybe find 2 clips that no one cares about anymore because it was 8 months ago. And if it's not talking about AI, nobody cares right now, right? So it's a great way to take what you are passionate about. So for example, I wanted to write an article about how to write a podcast intro script, like a pilot, a podcast pilot. That's what we call it. Nobody calls it a podcast pilot. They call it a podcast intro script. And I learned that from searching to see the search volume on Google. So I might call it something fancy, like a podcast pilot, but nobody else does. And what they were searching for was, how do I write a podcast intro script? And so that was the blog that I wrote. The information was the same, but what I did is I answered the exact question that was being asked. So I provided the value and experience that I know, but with what people actually are looking for right now.
That's the key.
And I think a lot of times we think we know people are looking for, and we have no clue.
No. And the information is there, the data, it exists. You can find out what people are actually searching. So why not figure out the language, the words that people are actually using, and make your videos? And this is where the optimization piece comes in. And I know I'm speaking to this through the lens of YouTube, because that's the channel that I'm most, successful on, or have, help other people with. But we're just talking about content in general. It's the same thing that applies. And so you want to understand, what is the language? What are the words that they're using? Because your own vernacular, how you have the curse of knowledge. You know your industry inside and out, and there's jargon, and there are words that we use in production that other people don't even know of. So why are you titling your video with words that are not going to be searched?
Exactly, because when it broke down to it, 4,000 people a month are searching for podcast pilot, and 47,000 people a month were searching for podcast intro script. So, and now we're ranking number 2 on Google for that particular blog, because was the highest, search volume. So yeah, I think it's really interesting. It's like, you be good, but don't worry too much about the production, but don't worry too little, but really focus on the knowledge, and then make sure your knowledge is what people actually
and I want to go back to something so important that you just said, and that is about repurposing content. I am pro repurposing content. I know you are too. We love it. But if from a production perspective, it takes so much time to go back into the ethers of your content 8 months ago and drilling through something and trying to timestamp and time code a long interview to find one little snippet. From a production perspective, you're better off just doing something current and new and fresh, with a new relevant mindset around whatever it is that you're talking about. And often, and I'm a fan of repurposing, but you have to be careful too. You don't want to be going back and repurposing stuff that's at a point where you had a different thought or a different idea. And this is my situation too. I mean, I have a lot of content from video marketing from years ago, but this doesn't pertain to today, because things have evolved with AI, with Web3, with where everything is going. I have to have new thoughts, and I need to put that out into the world now and for the future.
Right.
Well, Sheryl, you're one bad mamma jamma. I'm super impressed with you, honestly. I love that you are such a future forward person, and you have a really great grasp on content. I mean, it's no wonder you were on TV for 17 plus years, so you should. But it's really impressive what you're doing and how in tune. So tell me about some of your clients. Like, how are you working with your clients with content marketing? What does that really look like?
Well, I mean, we're working with coaches, consultants, experts that are in the growth phase, right? They want to scale their businesses. They have a product or service that they have been getting results for their clients, but typically those clients have come to them by referral. They've come to them through word of mouth or referral, and their own marketing is not quite dialed in. For some reason, they are not getting the engagement, they're not getting the results, they're not getting the clients, sometimes because their mind is a mess, or their process, right? Their actual process to produce content is so cumbersome and so inefficient that it doesn't make sense for them to be doing it that way. They're on a hamster wheel of social media that isn't working. And, we know social media has changed a lot. So you have to have a better strategy. Hoping that people find you is not a good strategy. Hope strategy doesn't work. Right? It's like, oh, I'm
Not in
waiting
this
to get
noisy
discovered.
world.
That was like me, back in the day, just sort of sitting around going, I hope somebody discovers me and puts me on TV. No, you have to have a better strategy than that, And so what is your strategy to bring in consistent, targeted leads, preferably on autopilot? That's why I love YouTube. Social media certainly has a place. It's an amazing distribution channel. Millions of people are on there. But you have to understand what the game is and play within that sandbox appropriately, because otherwise you lose your shirt. This is what happens. So many people go, oh, I have the best product or service. I'm going to do all these Facebook ads. They do them way sooner than they should. They don't have a high converting funnel. They don't know their numbers.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
And so, coaches, consultants, experts get into this line of work because they feel drawn in their heart to be able to give and make the world a better place. That's really what they do. And they're taking sometimes their professional experience and packaging that up into masterminds and programs and courses and other, consulting, coaching, what have you. But they get caught up in this web of confusion and overwhelm and hamster wheel-like activities that are non-income generating. And it's a shame. And there's all kinds of shiny objects out there. And it's not really their fault. They're being targeted with ads on Facebook and other platforms that tell them, oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. And then they go down this rabbit hole for 8 months. I talk to them all the time. I get people on the line with me all the time, Molly, and they're in tears. They've been burned so many times now that they're fearful of actually getting out there. It's the opposite of what we need them to do from a content perspective. We need people to get out there confidently with a point of view and be sharing that. And some they recoil because they've been burned so many times. It's traumatic. It's trauma.
Well, and, the internet is a mean place. There's that trending song that girl put out right now. And she's like, if I was a fish and you caught me, you'd love me. And then the hook is like, why is everybody on the internet so mean? But it's like people really are. And if you're not really confident in your product and your service and your messaging and you put something out and then somebody trashes you, it's going to ruin your whole world because you're not confident. If somebody trashes me, I'm like, dude, I've been doing this 23 years. It's cool. You can think whatever you want. I know my product. I know it works. I've done it for other people. What you think about it doesn't matter to me, and I will block and delete and not even think about you a half a second later. If you're not confident in your products and your services and what you're doing and you're not really sure, then you're going to take those comments to heart, and then it seems like a very hostile place, because it is. The internet it's a wonderful place filled with amazing memes and cool stuff and horrible people. You know what I mean? The loudest horrible people are there. So being really clear on what your offer is. And I agree. I think a lot of times the idea of this funnel, and it is important to have a funnel and a pathway, but I think people get confused that they're going to have this funnel just by putting content out. And it's no, to really have a funnel, you need to do paid ads. There's a lot more. And I think people gloss over that. And then they think they just, dance on TikTok or get 1 million views. I have a client right now, Gina Malakan Long. She's amazing. And she started a TikTok account, has 5,000 followers in a month, has videos with over 1 million views. She's like, nobody messages me, nobody talks to me. She's like, it was kind of a waste of time. She's like, Instagram people are a little more engaged, but LinkedIn is really where I'm getting people. And so it just goes to show you, not every platform is for you. And even having 500,000 views is not necessarily going to do anything. So many people are focused on those views, and it's let's even pretend that it did do something. Could you handle 100 leads tomorrow? I couldn't.
It's such a good point, Molly, because here's the thing. If you're a coach, consultant, or expert, and you're, let's say, in the early-ish stages of your business and you need to grow, okay? You need a high-ticket offer. You don't want to do an ascension model at this point. And this is what so many people do because they see the people that they admire at a stage where they're like, oh, I want what Marie Forleo has. I want what Amy Porterfield has. It's like, if you were to go in the background and look at what those women have, they've built that up over a decade, 12 years. They have teams and people. They didn't start where you're seeing them right now. So for you to go out and try to imitate that is futile. What you need to do is start off with a high ticket product or service, and you need fewer clients to serve to reach your goals. Let's say your initial goal is 6 figures, right? 6 figures annual revenue. You need high ticket offer. Here's where it gets interesting from a content perspective. You don't need to have 1 million followers on Instagram in order to sell 20 of your 200, your 10K product or whatever it might be. Like, just start doing this, get out a calculator and do the math, and you'll be surprised. It's like, oh, I only need 10 clients. Oh, now all of a sudden you start going, wait a minute. If I put out valuable content on YouTube, I put out valuable content on a podcast, and if I have the right strategy driving that podcast, now I don't have to talk to 100 million people. I just need to know my numbers. It's like, I need 10 sales. Okay, so why don't I talk to 30 people this month?
You'll get one.
These are not millions. We're not talking about millions and millions of people. Put out some content on your podcast. Have a strategy to have conversations with those people and have it lead to either prospects, partners, or platforms, meaning people that could become clients of your thing, right? Or partnerships, collaborations, joint ventures, strategic partners, people who can promote, you promote them, and or platforms where you get to be a speaker on their platforms or people that they know who have platforms. That's the key to success as a coach, consultant, expert. It's not a funnel. It's not an ascension model. And that's something that you and I, we all see so often, and it breaks my heart.
It really does.
Writing that down. Keys to success are the 3 Ps: podcasts, platforms.
Yeah, prospects,
partners.
Yeah.
Prospects, partners, and platforms.
Yeah,
there it is. I was just like,
that's
good.
good.
3 Ps to success right there.
We're making a quote graphic out of that one.
Right,
sure.
right. So kind of sticking on the podcast there. When did you decide to start that? Was it after a while? And then, you're just kind of talking about your approach there. And then one thing I like to ask everybody that comes on here that does have their own podcast is, outside of Molly's episode, what's kind of one that really stuck out and was like, this one's going to be great. Like, this is exactly what I want the audience to hear and read. And this is just going to be a really good episode.
So let me start with why and how I got started in podcasts. This was years ago. There was, I don't know if you know Cliff Ravenscraft. He was, back in the day, he was the podcast answer man. Okay. This is going back to like 2013 when I started the seeds of what became my business eventually and got into marketing, and we're really looking toward, a path of building my own thing at some point, but I was still a broadcaster at that moment. And I would follow him. And I think he was amazing. Podcast answer man. So many great tutorials on YouTube. In fact, he gave us a whole course on YouTube for free. And I followed that, but that's what time it was then, right? We didn't have a lot of the tools that we have at our disposal today at that time. And so I tried to do the podcast thing a couple of times, different iterations, different names. It was confusing, right. Libsyn, all the things. I mean, it was just way more intensive than I had ever thought. And also, I did not apply. This strategy is something that I learned by doing it. And so the first 2 iterations back in the day were really not applying this strategy. It was what most people do, right? It's like, I got to get new noteworthy. I've got to get downloads. I've got to get sponsors and advertisers. And that can happen. Sure, absolutely. That's a viable path, but that's a long-term path. So people get burned out and they keep doing their podcast and they go, why is this not working? And so if your only path is audience driven, you got to be really committed to this process if that's your only path to monetization. And that was my only path at that point. So eventually I burned out. I eventually focused back over to YouTube, got a better strategy, reapplied it. Matt, to your point, this was in August of 2021 is when I thought, okay, I'm going to start cashing on camera, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently this time. I'm going to do it with the mindset of bringing and attracting guests onto the show who are highly likely to either become prospects, partners, or platforms for me. And that's when everything changed, to the point where I was like, this is amazing. Now I need to teach this to other people. And that's where Profitable Podcast was born. That led me to Scalable Business Accelerator, which now includes a variety of different prescriptions for coaches, consultants, and experts in a 3-step game plan over 6 months to help them get clarity and focus on. It might be a podcast. It might be a YouTube channel. It might be your offer sucks right now. You need to figure out your audience, whatever that prescription is for where they're at, and getting them out of that pattern of overwhelm. So I hope that answers your question, but I think that the path was long.
Yeah.
The path was long and arduous, and I had to go through so many iterations to finally land on this strategy. The second part of your question was, what podcast have I been on where I've been a guest? Was that your question?
Well, that too. We can add that in there too. But like, I guess, so yeah, we can add that there. But the original one was, like of guests that you've had on yours, the Cash Out on Camera show. Like, what's one that kind of really stuck out to you? Like, this is going to be
many.
the one.
I think
right
we've
here.
so many. I mean, I have had Ethan Butte, who wrote the book Human-Centered Communication. He was a standout for me because his whole concept of the book is the idea that there's so much digital pollution out in the world. And I just loved how he framed that. And so we had a great conversation about that. I've also spoken to one of the leaders of Kajabi, which I'm a huge fan of and have been a proponent of Kajabi for a very long time. And so, having people like that on the show, I mean, there are so many different people that come to mind, but
Right.
yeah, just wonderful conversations. Some of the conversations get deep and emotional, even though it's primarily a marketing podcast. But be surprised at how much that brings up for people. I just had one recently with Amanda Abea, and we were talking about money mindset and how sometimes your own crap, from your childhood just rears its ugly head when you're an entrepreneur, and just going into that deep place. So there have been a few standouts, but I would say I've enjoyed every single conversation I've had.
It's a great answer. It's a great
Very
answer.
good.
I really love what you said, and we say the same thing with our clients, and it's like the light bulbs always go off. With a podcast, a branded podcast that's for your business, the guest is more important than the audience, and I think that's very contradictory to what's being touted out there. Get reviews.
It's very
Nobody
contradictory.
And YouTube is or iTunes is a dead end street. You get 1 million views or 1 million downloads on iTunes. All you did was make Apple richer. You don't get a dime from that. You can't even communicate with that audience unless you record a podcast. So if you have 500,000 subscribers on your iTunes podcast, you have 0 ways to communicate with them unless you record a podcast episode to speak to them directly. And YouTube is very
This is really key and important.
It's very opposite.
This is so key. Your let's say YouTube or podcast. I mean, those are the primary, things that I focus on. You have to have a way to take people off of that platform onto your own list. And not just your email list. I'm talking about your database, your list of network connections, your database of access. Who do you have access to? And I think in this transition from Web 2 to Web 3, this is what's going to be more important going forward. It's going to be, who do you know? Who can you call up and ask to partner with or collaborate with in some
Relationships.
way? Certainly, relationships, connections, database, access. This is the most important thing. So you're right. You can have all kinds of downloads on your podcast, and that's awesome for your ego. But it's not as so awesome for your pocketbook.
No.
You have to have a better strategy.
And YouTube, at least, you can post. It's a social media network. You can post posts on there. You can post shorts on there. You can post full-length videos on there. You can do live chat with people on there. And if you get 1 million plays on YouTube, you're getting a check, right? And, instead of Apple Man getting a check, you get a check, right? So I think it's...
That's why I love it.
Exactly.
That's why I love it. I mean, monetization model with YouTube is... again, twofold. Yes, bring people off your list, sell your own products and services through your channel. That's a key thing. But the added bonus of YouTube, more so than any of the social platforms, is that it is the best monetization channel as far as them paying you to be a creator.
Exactly.
It's absolutely the best. No doubt.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm a huge fan. I love YouTube. I mean, 4 years ago when we started Heartcast Media, we were one of the few people doing video podcasts. And, you know, back then all the purists were like, it's not a podcast if it's on YouTube. And like, there was all these people were really angry about it. I'm like, okay, well, tell that to Joe Rogan, dude. You know what I mean? You're going to tell him he doesn't have a podcast? Like, you know, and now everybody's like on the YouTube program, but it really was a lot of kickback in the beginning. Like people were like really focused on podcast is only audio. And it's like, okay, sure. But if you want to have a podcast for your business, then like it doesn't even matter. Use all the.
Well, technically from a content perspective, yes, you can argue that a podcast is technically audio. But you and me and others who have been doing, let's say, video interviews for the podcast after all this time have benefited from something much more dynamic on the video platform for social media, for YouTube. Because I see this a lot where people start an audio podcast and then try to make they want the best of both worlds, but they go at it the opposite way. They'll start with an audio and then try to create a video to go with it. And it's not the two people talking because you didn't capture that. So now you have to have a strategy of like, where you're going to need B-roll. Where are you getting that B-roll? Because you have to make sure that you have the rights to use it. And is there music? Because now there's copyright and like all these different things. And now you end up in a post-production quagmire of I'm trying to, creating audiograms or whatever the thing is that you want to do, waveforms, all that. Or you could just record two people talking and
make it easier.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And especially when you look at the data on audiograms, nobody listens to those. They don't. Certain platforms, they do a little better, but like at the end of the day, like if I'm scrolling on LinkedIn, I'm not going to stop and play that and listen to it. I need it to be like served to me. So they're not even the most effective. It's like you said, just record it. And now when you have things like Zoom, which is super user-friendly, not the best platform to record on per se, but super user-friendly, there's no reason to not do video. It's not like you got to hire people to come with cameras and lights and it's going to cost you $1,000. You're recording on Zoom anyway, most likely. So why not?
Yeah. I use Restream because it's it does everything, right? It records video, you can go live. But what it does is it gives you, the creator, the interviewer, the option of being able to add in elements live as a look live if you're recording it. So with a click of a mouse, now you can add elements in there, lower thirds, full screen graphics, overlays, whatever the case may be. You can even run video clips, any number of things that you can do with it, only limited to your own imagination. And so that's exciting because now you can actually include that while you're recording, and now you're limiting or even eliminating all of that post-production. So I say that get smart, use the technology of today to make your life easier. And those tools didn't exist back, 5-7 years ago.
A short time ago, before we wrap up, it reminds me when I first started Heartcast Media and I was doing video from the very beginning with all of our podcasts, we were using Switcher Studio and iPhones because I didn't have an editor, right? I was very new in the business.
I was
right?
too.
And so I was like, I can't
that.
afford to pay somebody to edit. So I was like, well, if we real time edit, right? So we were using Switcher Studio. We had iPhones across the table trying to not get the phones in the shot. I mean, it was like geometry.
I would be sitting in the studio and I would have the big mixer in front of me and I'd be watching mics and everything and then I'd be like, oh crap, switch over to the iPad, the main iPad. And just like, I got to switch because Tim's talking now or this guy's talking now. All right, back to the audio.
But then we wouldn't have any editing at the end of it.
I did the same thing.
And it worked really well for us, until we expanded big enough to hire an editor. And we were a podcast production company, you know what I mean? And we still had to be scrappy and find a way to get this to work and not send somebody 4 camera angles with an hour of footage. It would have cost me a fortune to edit that, right? So
and we're still finding new tools every week, pretty much. That we just switched to one this week for our company, and it's been fantastic.
No, I remember using Switcher Studio in the day, and I loved it. I loved it. I remember doing a live stream. I remember doing a live stream one time I was a chaperone for my son's school trip to Toronto. We went to medieval times. And on the way back on the school bus, I had committed to my audience that I was going to do a live stream every, whatever it was, Thursday at 2 p.m.
Right.
I was on the bus with a bunch of French-speaking kids all hanging over me. And I was there with my phone doing a live stream on the school bus on the 401.
Hey, man.
I mean, it was crazy.
Hey, man.
It was so fun.
I love it.
But I think you're right. You have to get scrappy, but more importantly, you have to have a strategy. Like, what is your content strategy? What's your plan? What's your production plan? What is your message? What tools are you going to use? And if you don't know, ask. Again, that's the benefit of having a network of people that you have access to, because you can ask for recommendations from people.
Exactly.
If you're not connected to a bunch of people right now, you're going to be sadly losing.
That's exactly it. I spend a lot of time thinking about relationships and how important they are, because especially living in Costa Rica, the qualifiers that sort you in America go away. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care if you have the vaccine. I don't care what party you belong to. Are you going to drive me to the hospital if I get bit by a poisonous snake? Like, I don't, are you going to help me out if there's a landslide? Am I going to be there for you when you get sick? And all those other things don't matter. And it's just such a good reminder that, like, your entire life is literally designed by the relationships in it. And so is your business, so it's not just important to pick the right husband or wife or partner. It's also important to pick the right clients, and important to pick the right, associations and partnerships, because your entire life is literally defined by the relationships that you hold. And I'm convinced of that 1000%. So I would say if somebody is interested and curious, they should call you, Sheryl, because, you are, soup to nuts, as they say. You can really get somebody tightened up and get a game plan and a program. And so if you're listening to this, party people, and you are intrigued, definitely hit up Sheryl. You can hit up her website. She's got discovery call links on there. There's a really excellent podcast interview that I did with her on there about leveraging your content and time. Shameless plug there. But Sheryl, if you, I don't want to ask you where can people find you, because people are going to find you if they want. Can you give me the avatar of your ideal client? I know they talk about ideal, but I mean for you, like a client that would actually bring you joy, you'd like to work with. Like, what does that profile look like? And maybe somebody who's listening will say, that's me.
It's a coach or consultant that is earning, say, $5,000 a month. They've gotten those clients from referrals or word of mouth, and there's no path forward to scale. So they're either at capacity or they're soon to be at capacity, and they're not charging what they're worth, and there's no path forward. And they're scrambling on social media trying to figure that out, when that's not the game. The game is to have a better strategy to get clients, and that's the ideal person for me to talk to.
Well, I feel like you just described a lot of people for sure. So if that's you and that resonates with you, then hit up my girl Sheryl and get that discovery call booked and see how she can help you, because the work she does is really great. And we are proud to associate ourselves with her in any way and send her any clients that we can, because we believe in the work that Sheryl does. We appreciate, the time, effort, and experience she has that she's putting into it. So without further ado, we went a little longer than normal, but as predicted, this was a great conversation. So that's well, right. So thank you.
This was fun. Thank you so much. What a great conversation. Such an important one too. I love talking with people who understand content, and especially, production, and who really have, I think, the right philosophy for the day and age that we're in right now. And that's coming full circle on this conversation. It's like, what stage are you at in your business? But let's also understand what stage we are at as entrepreneurs in this world right now.
Agreed.
It's a very different world, and we have to have our eyes open to where we are and where things are going.
And who if it's a zombie apocalypse, who do you want on your team, right? And that's how you should think about the clients that you work with, the vendors that you hire, and everything else, right? Who you really want on your team. Because I think you should want your clients to win, right? You want to do extra things for your clients. You want to go above and beyond. And so working with the right people makes all the difference in the world. So I'm sure a lot of people.
Yeah. Like, give thought to, you have to understand about, YouTube. I think every coach or consultant needs to understand YouTube. I mean, you do have to understand what's going on there. Whether you choose to execute that is a different thing, because it might not be the thing that I don't know, it could be a different path for you, but it's a really, really powerful tool to use. And I think podcasting also is a very powerful tool.
Agreed.
One or the other, maybe even both.
Look at that.
That you can use in your business. And you're flying.
For sure.
You're flying.
Agreed. Well, look, I met you because of your podcast, and we've had other conversations outside the podcast, and so it's just the proof is in the pudding, right? Like, we've established a great relationship. We feel very similar on things, and I feel very comfortable sending you business and vice versa. So look at that. And that was just a month ago that I met you, and you're already on our roster of favorite people. So
feels like we're long lost friends from years ago, but it's only a new relationship. But that goes to show you the power of connection too, is that when you find people that are really kind of get you and you get them, it can feel like you've known each other for years.
And stick together, because from the outside it could look like we do the same thing, and maybe other people would view each other as competition. And I'm like, no, this is a wonderful partnership and relationship.
Yeah.
You never know, even if it just means having a drink with you at the next G podcast or something at the hotel bar, it's still like worth every bit of time, because that's what it's all about, right? It's all about feeling a part of a community and doing good things. So if you're out there, I think a lot of new business owners too are very protective of their stuff, and there's no note that's never been written. There's no word that's never been said. There's no song, nothing here is original. It's you, and don't be afraid to share and meet people and extend those relationships, because if you hold everything too close to the chest, you miss out on really wonderful opportunities with people. So on that note, thank you, Sheryl, so much for coming on the show with us. It's been absolute joy chatting with you, and I'm sure we'll have you back again or whatever, but I'm sure this journey has just begun. So thank you. All right, you heard it here, folks. Thank you for tuning in for another episode of Camp Content with Sheryl Plouffe with the French accent. We really love having her on the show. We appreciate your time and effort listening to the show, watching the show, wherever you're getting it. If you find the content valuable, please consider sharing it on your network. And of course, visit us at heartcastmedia.com to see all the content we're making and everything that we're doing. And so until next time, be excellent to each other, and we'll see you in a few days.
Produced by Heartcast Media.